Hello, everyone. I am Charlotte Tweed, founder of Liberty Travel Coach and a relocation strategist, and welcome to Free Thinkers Rising. And I have here today with me Zuzana Martakova, business development leader for Europe with Freeth'm Towns, a project that I'm so excited about and love to learn more about every day. So, Zuzana, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me, Charlotte. It's lovely to be here. I'm a freedom lover. What else is there to say? I was raised in post-communist Czech Republic, and luckily my parents always led me in the way of, just freedom, more individual freedom. And so I got into the sphere, into the realm of, privacy, liberty, individual freedom, stuff with these values in my late teenage years, early 20s. It hasn't left, it hasn't gone anywhere yet. I've worked with plenty of projects and businesses and some events around the space. And most recently, I've been working with Freeth'm, which is essentially a real estate company, but I like to say that we sprinkle real estate with philosophy. So we're on the journey to build these privately operated, self-sufficient, decentralized, sustainable towns around the world. And essentially, the people or the audience that we're targeting are mostly city dwellers, so people who are based in cities but are kind of fed up with, generic city life, especially in the recent 6 years or so. Cities have been kind of failing us. Of course, they're amazing, super convenient, wonderful infrastructure, obviously depending on where you are. However, with, all the benefits and with all the conveniences, there are some trade-offs. There is a lot of anonymity, which can be a good, it can be a bad thing. There is a lot of noise. There is a lot of pollution. There is, never-ending inflation. That is, of course, not just a city thing. That is everywhere. But, just cities come with a lot of burdens possible. So toxicity, pollution, loudness, these ever-present stressors for the nervous system. So essentially, we are building our towns in rural locations, so in nature, back where us human beings belong, but with all the amenities that cities offer. Because, of course, once you are used to city life or the comforts of city life, it is challenging to get unused to it, right? So we do want, we emphasize the self-sufficiency in terms of the grid, electricity, and food, and water. So we only look for properties with natural bodies and sources of water. And the properties that we source are fairly huge, or well, not huge, but they're not small, they're not super big. But half of each property, roughly, will always be dedicated to agriculture, to farming spaces, outdoor, indoor, some aquaponics, hydroponics, some orchards, stuff like this, so that we can really focus on the independence of the town itself. So, of course, we're not isolating ourselves. We don't want to isolate any of our future residents or anything like this, but we just want to offer essentially these safe havens, where you get to connect back to yourself and to a proper quote unquote community around you. So of course we're after people with similar values, such as yourself and me, who really value people who really value and who really appreciate their lives, really value their privacy, really value their freedom, and these values are very important for them. They're very important for us, and so this is what we build it all around.
Now, I know I myself, and I do have clients that are EMF sensitive. Are
Mm.
something that you are taking into consideration as well?
Yes, absolutely. This is also a very important topic for me. And again, this isn't necessarily just a problem in cities because you have, 5G and whatnot towers pretty much everywhere. But we do want to minimize the effects of non-native EMFs. And this is our guy, Christian, who is our CTO, our technician, who has years, if not decades, of experience working in the smart city industry. But he's very focused on mitigating the possible dangers of these. So we definitely want to build a town that is fairly longevity, if you will, oriented, but we just really focus and emphasize the well-being, the health of the residents themselves, because this is, this is what creates sustainability. This is what creates a really sustainable and a really beautiful place where you actually want to live. So nothing overly toxic. Of course, the homes will be either prefab or modular homes, and we do focus on very low toxic, non-toxic materials. Um, and the interiors of the homes, of course, minimize, plastics and stuff like this, all artificial materials. And then, of course, again, the EMFs go hand in hand with that. So I don't have details on that, but this is definitely a huge topic that we will focus on, that will be taken into massive consideration.
Great, excellent. And I know you have a longevity specialist on your board as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Her name is Judith, and she is a longevity freak in the best possible sense. I think she's been into longevity way before it was cool, so to say. But this is exactly on her checklist, kinda. So mitigating EMFs, lighting, of course, interior lighting. So we minimize any blue light, especially after hours, when it gets dark in the evening. Again, it goes hand in hand with the food that we eat. Of course, we want to focus again with self-sufficiency. We want to focus on locally produced, organic, or really as clean as it gets, organic food, because this all impacts our well-being, our lifespan, and our joy span, which is Judith's favorite term. Because ultimately, longevity is, of course, not just about how long we live, but also the quality of the life, right? There is no reason to live to 120, 50, 80 if you're, on your deathbed, basically, for the last how many decades, but really just maximizing the joy span. And this entails everything. It's, again, minimizing any toxicity, minimizing any pollution, but also, minimizing any toxic relationships, any connection. So this is also why we're so heavy on bringing in the right kind of people, right type of people who at least are rooted in the same values. So it's very holistic in that way.
Mhm. And I'm obsessed with food. That's one thing, and the self-sufficiency is very important, especially what we see going on with food supplies and food chain.
Mm,
Let's talk a little bit more about the self-sustaining food aspect of it. What are
mhm.
plans? Give us a little more details on the plans for that.
Yeah. To be honest, I think achieving 100% self-sufficiency in terms of food is very, very challenging. However, with that said, we want to maximize the percentage, especially in this regard. I mentioned that we look for properties in rural places, so naturey places. However, with that, we actually do not want to be further than, say, 90 minutes from a major city with an international airport and with some even more robust infrastructure. Again, the cities, or the towns, rather, that's the right word. The towns are projected to be independent, but again, not isolated. So we have our own infrastructure. We're not cutting ourselves off, but also we are not supplying everything for ourselves. We are not really necessarily producing any commodities or stuff like that. But with the food, like I said, we want roughly half of the property to be dedicated to agriculture. So you have outdoor farming spaces that gives you, a bunch of trees, of course, dependent on the property that is ultimately selected, because it depends on the soil, the water situation, underground, everything. So trees, orchards, aquaponics, hydroponics. You can get fish and veggies, living symbiotically. Um, and obviously, people also will have a chance to have their own, backyards, kind of their own garden, so they can grow their own herbs, stuff like this. We will also offer chicken coops for rent, among many, many other things. So this can look like, you can obviously buy eggs from someone else or from a local market, or you can have your own chicken coop, have maybe, five, six chickens running around. Um, Ultimately, the housing is designed to be all standalone villas. There is some co-living in there also, but the majority of the houses will be, single family standalone villas. So with plenty of property around them for people to be able to do whatever they want in terms of food. And of course, we want to supply the amenities to make it as easy and as straightforward as possible. So again, I mentioned chicken coops. There will be beehives also available for rent, and bees are, magical beings, I think. They produce everything they produce is amazing and so beneficial. We do also work with a Swiss-based company and that is a very sustainably and self-sufficiently oriented. They are able to advise on a bunch of stuff. It's kind of, grandma wisdom meets like high tech knowledge, which I think is the perfect intersection of this. So they serve kind of as our advisors for going about all of this. But like I said, ultimately what we are able to plant, what we're able to grow really depends on the specific property, and this will differ, of course, town to town. However, we are factoring in both, veggies or both plants as well as animals, some livestock. So we're hoping that all of this will work out. But again, it comes down to the specifics of the land itself, ultimately.
Exactly, in the climate and
Yeah,
local
yeah,
flora.
yeah, yeah.
And with the other topic that is huge on people's minds right now is energy efficiency.
Mm.
Energy is under threat right now. What are your plans for energy?
Yep. So I did mention that we want to have our own grid, microgrid. This is mostly, of course, batteries as well as solar panels and small wind turbines. To be honest, again, I am not the expert to talk about this. We do have our sustainability engineer who would be able to tell you a lot more. But again, with the properties that we look at, we really target warmer climates. And of course, the warmth, the sun helps with, both the self-sufficiency in terms of food and in terms of energy. Of course, the sun is an amazing source of absolutely everything, kind of just like bees. So
Save the peace.
again, we are aiming for independence in terms of this. And so I know that the way that this is structured is to obviously be able to provide all the energetic needs that the town itself will need, and possibly storing obviously a little bit more if something happens, something goes off, so that it's not a full blackout. We're not necessarily fans of blackouts,
Oh,
so we do definitely will be aiming to prevent this from happening. And again, it's our sustainability engineer as well as Christian, our technician, who would be able to tell you a lot more about this. So happy to connect you with them.
yes, yes. Now you had mentioned about renting a chicken coop. So what
Mm.
about housing and how does that work? Can people buy or do they rent? What does that
Hmm.
look like?
Right. So we want to enable both options along with this rent to own option. So
Oh, okay.
both renting will be possible, both ownership will be possible, of course, and then this rent to own pathway just kind of translates into, basically putting a foundation for about 5 years or so, kind of like a deposit, and then after X amount of years, you're able to just pay the rest. So you're not tying down yourself with a mortgage or anything like this for decades to come. Um, Again, for anyone, we want to kind of satisfy all preferences. Obviously, if we're looking at possibly building in the US, which we are factoring some choosing some properties, especially in Florida, possibly Texas, Arizona, checking out properties over there. Of course, if we're talking about the US, then ownership is really necessary. That's kind of how the people are wired. Over here in Europe, not so much. Of course, some people, especially some nations, are also heavily kind of rooted in real estate ownership as well. But then many people also want the flexibility, and this is also tied kind of into our ultimate dream, which is building this global network of these towns. And the global factor or the global part of it really ties into the flexibility. Because if something happens again, such as it did in 2020 and the following years, being tied to real estate is not necessarily the best. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. But if you just want to pack up your things and go to a different town elsewhere, in a different country or on a different continent, then we do eventually want to make this possible. And again, if you're just renting, it is that much easier to literally just pack your bags and go. I mean, after all, you're the best to know about this. You have this firsthand
That's how I've been living,
experience.
yes, for the last almost 5, 6 years now. And yeah, renting does give you ultimate flexibility. It's exactly like you said, you can pack up and go whenever you want.
Mm,
And I think it's also very interesting that you're offering the rent to own now. I didn't realize you were doing that. So I think that is good too, because really how people I think are looking at where they live and how they live is definitely changing. And they're looking at more
mm,
options than just I have to buy a house. And
right.
rent to own is an excellent option for people to get into buying their first home if that's what they're looking for. And co-living is something that I'm hearing a lot about lately too. My husband is quite into real estate. That's his
Mm-hmm.
business. And he's recently been looking at co-living spaces and how those work. So I think that is another very, very tangible option for you guys. I think that's great. And yeah, I was going to ask you if, since you mentioned Florida, Texas, Arizona, because I was going to say, do you have North American projects that you're looking at? Let's find out more about some of your projects that you have in Europe, your most recent one that you're working on.
Sure. Maybe just a little bit back to back off what you said before in terms of co-living and just living in general. We do have the housing divided into three categories, and the most affordable, the low cost one, is this co-living option. This is primarily targeted towards students or just fans of co-living. Of course, there's co-living communities these days pretty much all over. Some of them thrive, some of them not so much, but this is an option for sure, and it can be beautiful if you just want to be more lively. But then the two other options, kind of like the middle and the upper tier of the housing, like I said, will be these family standalone villas with plenty of privacy, with plenty of land around them. So again, we do want to make it viable and kind of flexible all around. In terms of the properties, so yes, there is some North America, especially Florida, and that we're looking at. We are kind of outsourcing it a little bit. We're not working on it. Our core team. We are, however, working primarily on Spain these days. So as you know, in the last few years, we've been working on Portugal really
Mhm.
intensely. But ultimately, it just came to the point where it was honestly just taking such a long time,
Mm.
And of course, this is Portugal, is the very end of Europe, is kind of out there. It's not the fastest. Its government likes to take its time. It's challenging to work with, honestly. And of course, Spain is right next door, so it's not necessarily a completely different issue. However, what we have found kind of so far is, of course, it's a massive country compared to Portugal. So
Mhm.
finding possible lands is that much easier. And price-wise, they are also much, much more affordable.
Mhm.
And we have our eyes set on a beautiful piece of land in the Malaga region. And we've had, I believe, 3 or 4 meetings with the local municipality over there. And I have to say, and maybe knock on wood even, that it's been going really well. They're much more approachable. Their demands, both, like time-wise and financial requirements, much lower than Portugal, which for us, because we've been bootstrapping this since the beginning, this is, much more realistic, much more doable. And they're moving faster, actually. It's progressing really nicely. So again, I'm knocking on proverbial wood. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But so far, this Spanish project, the Spanish property, has been going really well. So we're working busy behind the scenes, and so far so good. It's looking really good. So I'm excited about this. So this is Spain in terms of Europe, but we also have more possible locations in the pipeline. However, because each town, like I said, the properties that we look at are not huge, but they're not small. We look at roughly 100-hectare big properties, which I believe is some 250 acres or something like this. And each town is projected for roughly 300 homes, which translates into some 800 to maybe 1,000 residents, singles, couples, families, what you have.
Mhm.
So, in terms of real estate, this is a massive project. It's not your typical real estate anyway. It doesn't even have to be sprinkled with philosophy, like I said, but it's not traditional real estate. We're not just building a block of houses. We're not building a single house. We're building an actual town. And so each project, each town will be and is such a massive project that we're really taking it slow. We're taking it in, baby steps, really. We're not rushing anywhere. Again, with that said, we do have several locations in the pipeline. Again, warmer climates, so more like Southern Europe, some Eastern Europe, but again, South. We have some potential Asian locations too, but again, we're taking it slow and just focusing on one solid project at a time because it takes time. It takes time.
Now, the other thing that I wanted to ask about is governance and resident
Mhm.
contract. How does
Right.
that work? Some people are not familiar with this. This is a term a lot of people have never heard. What do you mean resident contract? So can you explain that a
Right.
little bit and how that may work?
Right. So the governance itself, we are again highly rooted in respecting and upholding people's privacy and protecting their freedom. So the governance within the entire town will be along the lines of a night watchman state, like a minarchy state. So essentially, the operator, which is us, Freeth'm, really manages the security of the people within the town and externally. We do also work with partners. These are, pre-collaborations kind of because this is not relevant at this point, but we do have some friends who run companies for dispute resolution because of course stuff like this will come up. We're all people after all. It's not always
Yes,
easy to get along, even if we are all aligned.
people
But
are
again, the
people.
governance will be super, super light touch and as minimal as possible with as much impact on, again, privacy and freedom all around as possible. And you mentioned the residence contract. So this will basically be a standard contract that you sign if you're renting or buying a house, an apartment. So this will be along the same lines with the addition of course, respecting kind of everything within the town. So we kind of have it pre-divided into into three parts, which is resident to operator, again, Freeth'm, and then resident to the entire space, to the environment. So of course, our foundational principles behind Freeth'm are the non-aggression principle. So of course, the initiation of violence is not tolerated.
Mhm.
Cannot be tolerated, of course, only in defense, not in initiation. And then the principle of living and letting live. And the founder of Freeth'm, when he was kind of just brainstorming Freeth'm at the very beginning, he was trying to figure out what humans and what us people can basically agree on. And he came up with these, which I think is very sensible because even if we realize it, and you don't have to be a libertarian, you don't have to be an anarcho-capitalist, whatever. If you're a decent, sane human being, you are living by the non-aggression principle. You are living by the live and let live principle. You're not causing harm intentionally to other people. You're not stealing anyone's property, whether that's a phone or just attacking their house. Like, you don't do this stuff, right? So this is kind of where we're coming from. And again, the resident contract will reflect all of this. And everybody who will wish to live in freedom or stay in freedom for however long or short time, they will need to abide by the resident contract.
Mhm. Great. Thank you for explaining that. So as we start wrapping up our talk, what do you think the value of intentional communities are moving into the future?
I believe the community is truly one of the biggest factors because, again, cities can be, there's people all around you, but they can also be anonymous and they can be really isolating because how many of us who live in apartment buildings, how many of your neighbors do you actually know?
Mhm.
And then, of course, if you live in like a village in a rural lifestyle kind of somewhere, it can also be very isolating, even for, lovers of off-grid living, stuff like this. It can get lonely. So we are definitely going to offer the value of community of like-minded individuals. And I don't take this lightly because it really plays a huge role because, we're also different, we're also diverse, which is beautiful. But then ultimately we do agree on these foundational values and it makes a huge difference. I think both of us can probably agree on this. It's nice to subject yourself to people with very different opinions. It's important to keep an open mind, but at the same time, it feels really good to surround yourself with people that you can trust them, you can rely on them. And again, it can be very sustainable, like true sustainability in this way. So the community is definitely a massive, massive factor in terms of what Freeth'm is offering, but so is also the self-sufficiency. Again, if you live in a city, and again, during, 2020 and the following years, the city was pretty much the worst place that you could have been. Stores were suddenly half empty. And then if we're talking about possible blackouts and stuff like this, it may be coming. It probably is coming. We'll see. But if you live in a city, you are very dependent on all of these supply chains, on all of these global supply chains, whether you realize it or not. And for me, I also realized this, quite recently. Is just I really cannot provide myself. if I live in the city. And I'm sure there's people who do. I'm sure there's people who are growing plenty of herbs and tomatoes on their balconies and stuff like this. But it's just a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more doable when you actually have some space, some green space around you. So again, the emphasis on self-sufficiency is there. And again, just the fact that we want to build these places, these towns in nature. Because again, as beautiful and as amazing and exciting cities are, it's concrete, it's a lot of stainless steel, it's a lot of material stuff like this, which are amazing. But then if you're surrounded by greenery, if you go for a walk in the woods, how amazing do you feel after? Whereas compare that to walking alongside a highway, which is stressful as hell. So I believe, and I'm biased, of course, because I'm working on this, and I'm working on this exactly because this is how I want to live.
Yes.
But I think many people share this, and I know many who are equally as excited about it as I am. These are amazing things. These are things that make you feel really good. Again, being surrounded by people that you kind of know, that don't stress you, kind of like seeing strangers on the streets does in a way stress your nervous system at all times. I mean, your body is protecting you, your brain is protecting you all the time. So just seeing familiar faces, not that you have to know them, on a deep level, being able to grow your own food, or just being able to source your food from sources that that you trust, that are clean, that are not polluted with glyphosate and what you have.
Mhm.
And at the same time, having the access to, again, the entire huge city infrastructure if you do need it, and having access, of course, to an international airport if you do need it. Again, it's if the time comes and you do need to pack your bags and just go, then you don't have to, roam through the jungle for 4 hours. But again, the city is not so far away, so all of this is manageable. So I think the comforts and the conveniences that we bring are really, really huge in this and really quite beautiful.
It is beautiful. I love the philosophy. I love the projects. I love the idea. To me, it sounds like heaven. Heaven on earth. It sounds just like the perfect place to live. And I could certainly see myself living in a freedom town someday, wherever
That
that
is
may
so
be. If it's
beautiful.
Europe or if it's North America. I love Texas. My husband and I love Texas. It feels like a second home to us too, even though we're in Mexico right
Yes.
now. And really, Mexico and Texas have a lot in common. They do.
I see.
They
Yeah.
do. So, Susanna, what is one actionable step that people can take today to find their community, to find their tribe?
Right. We always welcome more future residents. So people are very welcome to hop on our non-binding resident waitlist. Again, non-binding. So if you do sign up, there's no serious consequences that come with that. However, it does give you access to our community, and we stay in touch with every single person that reaches out to us. We always respond. We're always there. So we're building, of course, this resident waitlist, which helps with proof of demand. This is helpful, of course, for investors, for the community that we're in touch with, that we talk with. So on the website, freeth'm.com, and this is spelled free, THM, freethm.com. You can click on Stay with Us. You will see it right away when you click on the homepage, and this takes you to the waitlist. So you just need to really provide your email address. We send a newsletter occasionally. We do not spam, of course. You can unsubscribe at any time. But again, it gives you access to this community, and you can already start building up your, maybe online community. And then as soon as possible, we will transfer all of this into the offline world, into the physical world, which is about to happen. So we're very excited about that.
Yes, and it's being on the resident wait list is probably the best way to stay in touch with projects and how they're being updated. Yes.
Yes, yeah. Again, we send an somewhat irregular newsletter where we update on the most relevant and most important updates, recent updates. And again, if anyone wants to reach out directly, we respond to every single message, every single email. So we always like to keep people informed about what's happening behind the scenes.
Zuzana, I appreciate your time today so much. Is there one last parting thought you have for anybody or a question I should have asked you that I didn't ask you about freedom?
You asked me beautiful questions, so thank you for that, Charlotte. I think we covered it pretty nicely. But if anyone listening comes up with something or wants to challenge anything that I said, I would be more than happy to hear that because, to be honest, we usually hear very positive responses, just like from you, which is really beautiful, and I'm super grateful for it. But again, if someone wants to challenge something or maybe has some good ideas on what we could add here or there, we're super open to hearing about it. And we do involve, again, our community kind of in the future projection of the town itself. So we're more than happy and very open to any constructive criticism and open to feedback on that. So yeah, happy to hear from anyone.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Zuzana. I appreciate your time again.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you very much.